Hello everyone, and welcome to Rowan's Virtual Red and Blue. We hope all your families are doing well during this trying time in our world. As we discover a new norm, we want to remind and remember that the world is still running, even if primarily from home. Navigating politics and what is best for the country is normally a very difficult task, but with new restrictions, this duty has become even more challenging. Today, we'll look at politics, particularly how this time has affected politics and the running of our government. We'll even see a debate hearing the opinions of both the Republicans and Democrats of Rowan. Now we'll take a look at what the government has done to combat these changes and some tips on how to stay healthy.
On Friday, March 27, 2020, President Donald Trump signed into law a $2 trillion stimulus package to aid the American public and the U.S. economy during the fight against COVID-19. The stimulus package will stand as the largest emergency aid package in U.S. history. It is aimed at helping American workers, small businesses, and industries that are just holding on due to the recent spread of COVID-19. The key elements of the package include sending checks directly to individuals and families, expanding unemployment benefits, money for hospitals and healthcare providers, and financial assistance for small businesses, and $500 billion in loans for distressed companies. The stimulus package came together after congressional Republicans, Democrats, and the Trump administration had a long negotiation over the course of multiple days. The Democratic Party had issues with the package that was initially made by the Senate Republicans, arguing it put corporations ahead of workers. The core of the stimulus package is that it will provide direct financial assistance to Americans in the form of checks with the amount received based on income. Individuals who earn $75,000 in adjusted gross income or less will get direct payments of $1,200 each. Married couples earning up to $150,000 get $2,400 plus an additional $500 for each child. The payment was scaled down by income, phasing out entirely at $99,000 for singles and $198,000 for couples without children. In addition, the bill would provide billions of dollars in aid to hard-hit hospitals to deal with the outbreak, as well for state and local governments that are cash-strapped due to their response to the coronavirus.
Now for a short break. Stop spread the coronavirus by practicing social distancing, clean and disinfect commonly touched surfaces, wash your hands often using soap and water, use hand sanitizer. Symptoms appearing between 2 to 14 days include a fever, cough, and shortness of breath. If you think you have COVID-19, call your healthcare provider or go to your local hospital.
I personally like Donald Trump, and I think he's handling the coronavirus very well. It's his citizens that are not listening to the rules, which is why this is getting worse and worse, and more people are dying every day, especially in our state.
I honestly don't think that they're handling it very well. First of all, I think that we could have done a lot more things and taken larger steps in the start of this whole pandemic, because we saw other countries going through the same horrific things. So we should have maybe started our shutdown a little bit earlier or closed beaches during spring break. In addition, I don't think that the president is setting a very good example by stressing masks as optional, because I think we should be trying to show that we need to take all steps necessary and get better and stay inside.
Well, what I can say is there's definitely opportunities of improvement. I think some of the leadership has been lacking, as well as the communication across the nation as, what to do moving forward. It should be like one voice and not leave it up to individuals.
I think that Governor Cuomo is doing an excellent job and taking baby steps because we are certainly not ready to come back to the city. The virus is alive and well, and it's killing people, and it's an awful death. As far as Donald Trump, our president, Protos, yes, I respect him and his leadership during such an unusual occurrence. This never happened. This pandemic has not ever happened in the history of the world. This is global. This is not United States. This is global.
Coming up next,
we have new information on the voting situation.
Welcome to Is That Correct? Let's see if our contestants know how to properly wash their hands. Let's get right into it. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. Better luck next time. And that is correct. You win.
Though our world has been in upheaval, our jobs as citizens of the United States have not changed. One of those imperative responsibilities is voting. How has voting changed during this time?
Voting during COVID-19 has been a difficult situation to navigate, as electors strive to keep the integrity of the process while maintaining safety rules and restrictions implemented during this time. Due to social distancing orders and stay-at-home restrictions, several states have decided to have electronic online voting. Mail-in voting is also being utilized. Though some adjustments have been made, in-person voting is being mandated as vital for some people. Let's take a look at some precautions being taken in Neenah, Wisconsin, where in-person voting is still taking place. Paul?
As voters entered the old Shopko building here in Neenah, they were asked by poll workers where they normally voted. If their answer was Washington Park, then they'd follow the red line to their voting location inside. The multicolored line system was designed by the assistant city attorney with the overall goal of getting people in and out of the building as quickly as possible and with a minimum amount of social contact. Newly built plexiglass shields were in place throughout the building as an extra level of protection for poll workers. Workers say overall in-person voting seemed slower than normal, but the city did have several thousand absentee ballots as compared to a normal election that may seat only several hundred. With the decision on in-person voting coming down to the wire, the city says they tried to maintain public safety as their number one priority.
It's really worked well, and people seem to really appreciate the efforts that we've undertaken to help keep them safe, which is our first priority. Our first priority was to keep people, not only our poll workers and employees and staff safe, but the general voting public as well.
Volunteer poll workers here at this location worked a variety of shifts, and 9 members of the Wisconsin National Guard were here for the duration of the voting process.
Thanks, Paul. Whether you're voting in person, through mail, or online, it's important to remember to vote because your voice needs to be heard. Stay safe through this process. Stay tuned after the break to hear more about how COVID-19 is affecting people's daily lives.
Therapy dogs are a wonderful pastime, helping with a reduction of anxiety, decreasing loneliness from isolation, as well as being able to work on social skills and other communication problems. If you are seeking to improve upon any of these or other problems, consult your primary healthcare provider.
Hopefully everyone is voting in the safest way possible, as it is vital for our future. Coming up next, we'll hear more from the people being impacted during COVID-19.
Well, I lost my job. I was working at a daycare, and unfortunately unemployment is overwhelmed, so I am unemployed at the moment, getting no income. I personally like learning from home, so the only plus that this virus has for me is the online teaching, which I hope it continues because not only is it beneficial for me, but for all students of all ages.
I think it's been quite frightening going to work because you know that there's a lot of sick people there and that you're potentially exposing yourself and your family members. It's also frightening because you have a job to do, but you know people in your age group could potentially die from the virus like in any other age group.
I think that hindsight's 2020. We should have closed sooner. Had we known the severity of the problem. I did not know the details of how sick you can get from it until the courthouse was closed eventually on March 17th. So personally, I was put at risk. I have lost colleagues to this virus. 2 judges are now deceased, and the week before we closed, they were both packed courtrooms. Well, at least 200 lawyers in each courtroom. I had seen them. I had seen the judges that week. So I have been personally affected emotionally, and I'm not working. We setting up virtual courtrooms, and we're trying to move forward.
Coming up next, the debate.
Racism is a form of hate. We pass it on to our young people. When we do that, we are robbing children of their innocence. Ruby Bridges.
Now what you've all been waiting for, the debate. What's up, everybody? We're here to have a little debate / discussion today. Our two guests are Joe Von Borstel. He's a major in business management at Rowan University. And Ian Nielsen, he's the co-founder of Rowan for Bernie and the vice president of Rowan Progressives, and he's majoring in electrical and computer engineering. How do you assess the Trump administration's handling of the crisis thus far?
We knew that this virus was spreading. We knew that, we had to start preparing. We had to go into lockdown. And, sadly, the federal government missed the opportunity, and it had to fall on the states to impose those lockdowns. So a complete failure from the U.S. government in terms of, locking down the country. And then when we look at testing, we see, again, another failure in which, the federal government refuses to use the World Health Organization tests. So there are errors early on in testing, which is crucial to slowing the spread.
Obviously was not handled well in the beginning, initially, because not only the federal government, but the public didn't really recognize the fact that it was a credible threat, even though clearly it is. That in the time since then, the government has done an all right job. It's not great. Giving the power to the states to decide is the right course of action, because California is not Wyoming, and New York is not North Dakota. Of all the states in the Midwest, they have little to no cases because there isn't a huge population. There's not a lot coming in. Granted, there should be like movie theaters, bars, restaurants. That stuff should stay closed, regardless. Those are some of the most social places. Some of the places that germs would travel the most quickly. But as for cases like Georgia, where they open up all the way, that again, that's up to them. But I believe that is the wrong move. But I believe Dr. Fauci and the other officials have been handling it as well as they can, considering the late notice and the culture that we have in America. Because, like, if you look at Japan, they have a culture where they respect their elders and everyone stays normal. Here, no one cares.
Okay, all right.
It's harder. Japan hasn't been handling this particularly well either. I'll just throw that out there. Saying that it should be down to the states. I completely disagree with that. The states don't have the resources to handle something like this. That's why we have, the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as the CDC at a national level, because the federal government has the most resources to handle something like this.
I understand where you're coming from, but the state should use the federal government resources to make their own decisions. Because, like I said, the states that have the biggest populations, you can't compare them. Like, why shut down stuff unnecessarily if you don't have to? Because you have to keep the economy going.
In your opinion, what steps should the government be taking to improve the health and the economy of the nation?
It should be a state-by-state, case-by-case basis, where keeping as many businesses in states where it's safe. Again, as long as it's a safety thing and it's not going to be a risk. Keeping as many businesses as you can open is going to be I think the best route, and providing stimulus for the companies and the businesses that cannot stay open is going to be the safest route, because you can't just tell them to figure it out, because most businesses have an operating budget that only allow them to get by for a week or a month, or it's not long term, which is what this virus is.
I'll start at one. Medicare for all. Guaranteeing free access to healthcare for the entire time during this crisis, not only for people affected by COVID, but also people who are indirectly by COVID because the hospitals are overrun and they might have other conditions that they would have gone to the hospital anyway for. We should also immediately move to house all homeless people in this country. We have 500,000 homeless people in this country. Well, we have 2 million vacant homes. So we can immediately house all of those people through, an executive order. Release all non-violent prisoners, stop detaining in migrant camps in countries or in states across the country, including 2 here in New Jersey. We have to keep the economy going, especially for essential workers. And what that means is, not opening the rest of the economy for non-essential work. It means, providing one personal protective equipment. If we want to talk about restarting the government, restarting the economy, we should talk about a federal jobs guarantee that puts people in jobs that are safe for them to work at.
I don't think that encouraging people to go for immediate and what's the word for it? I guess immediate, non immediate conditions is going to help anything.
These massive corporations have been most of the response to the pandemic, and these companies had, it's over $4 trillion that the federal government has already given to, massive corporations in form of a slush fund. It's been 10 years since the Great Recession. If these companies had saved, just a little bit of money each year and put it in their savings instead of spending it all immediately as soon as getting it, they would be fine. They wouldn't need to be bailed out after less than a week.
We've learned time and time again that companies we believe are too big to fail they're never really too big to fail, especially when they have to pay all this overhead and how many jobs will be lost. But regardless, healthcare, we're clearly underprepared as a country. Most hospitals are designed to be at 80 to 90% capacity at all times during a normal time, where this is a pandemic, where there's going to be a severely increased number of people going to hospitals. That's more of a hospital trying to run as a business as opposed to a healthcare provider. There should be regulations put on hospitals and pharmaceutical companies to prevent that, where instead of increase taxes and have healthcare for all, because we saw a form of that with Obamacare, and that didn't go very well. And granted, it was impeded by all this other stuff. There's a lot of things you could say to detract or to say why it wasn't an perfect system, which clearly it was.
I actually picked up on a really great point that Joe made during that speech, which is that our healthcare system right now, our hospitals, as well as the insurance companies, are run like a business. Their main objective for operating is to make profit. And, how do you get rid of that profit incentive? Making healthcare a public service, making it a public good so that it's owned by the people. You can try and regulate, but it's not going to get rid of the underlying profit motive that is the cause that has led to not only the current situation we're in, but also the lobbying of these companies to the government in order to lift these regulations. That lobbying is still going to happen.
So while we both agree on the point that healthcare is run as a business and it shouldn't be, when have you ever seen a government-run agency run smoothly? I believe that
Medicare.
How many years did that take to perfect is the problem. Again, how many years did that take to perfect? It's if you want something that's going to be immediate and isn't going to take years and years, I think trying to regulate it will be the best option as opposed to trying to create an entirely new system, which people are going to fight.
The problem of do we have the money for it is clearly not a question because, we spend trillions and trillions of dollars giving money to massive corporations that already have been making massive profits. Do government agencies handle health? Will government agencies handle healthcare properly? I think they already do. The VA, Medicare, Medicaid, and we don't need to make a new system to re-perfect these things. We can just expand the existing services. We can expand Medicaid to cover every single person in this country. You don't need to re-perfect that system.
What do you make of a Joe Biden versus Donald Trump general election?
With the Joe Biden presidency, we're going to have more of an influence in a leftward direction. on things like, guaranteeing health care for people. The primary is still happening. Bernie's still on the ballot in almost every state that remains except for New York. Still possible. I seriously have concerns about going to bat with Joe Biden and even just defending and arguing for Joe Biden, because there's so many indefensible things that he's done, as well as his clear, cognitive issues. I think clearly it's a better choice than Trump, but I don't think he can beat Trump, if I'm being honest.
I'm going to have to agree with Ian on that one. I don't think he can beat Trump, but I think it's more than just Trump is incumbent or whatever. Because aside from, I think, George H.W. Bush, an incumbent hasn't lost in a very long time, and they rarely do. People like to vote with what they know, and Biden makes it very easy to make fun of him. I mean, if you think that's false, look at any of the interviews he's given in the last 6 months. They're all incomprehensible. He's totally in the pocket of the DNC and the political machine that'll just keep perpetuating the same stuff. Not saying Trump isn't, or that Trump is going to be any better, but at least he was voted for by the people, whereas Biden clearly seemed to have shafted Bernie,
All right, I want to thank both of you gentlemen for joining me today, taking the time out. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys both have a great day and stay safe during quarantine. Well, that's all we have for today, folks. We heard many important things to keep in mind, especially during this time. Thank you for watching Rowan's Virtual Red and Blue. Please stay safe and healthy, practice social distancing, and wash your hands. Good night.